Today we are going behind enemy lines, this time to get the inside scoop on the Kansas City Chiefs. Like the rap rock poet Zach De La Rocha once said, know your enemy. You are listening to the Huddle Up Podcast.
Welcome to the Huddle Up Podcast, your go-to show for all things Broncos.
Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up Podcast presented by Mile High Huddle and 24/7 Sports. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me is my co-host. He is your Denver Broncos reporter for 24/7 Sports. He is Zack Kelberman. What's new, my brother? How you doing?
I'm good. Another week down, another week closer to Broncos football. We're still in that dead period. It's still kind of tough, but hey, we're getting there.
Yeah, we have a couple of pressing Broncos topics to get to, and then we have a great guest today. But before we get to that, guys, make sure you're following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. Also, if you haven't done so, take some time, whether you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeart, wherever you're listening to the show, take some time and rate the show. Leave us a creative review. You have no idea how much that helps our show, how it helps us grow, how it helps us reach new listeners. So if you haven't done that, take a second, get that done. And also, we got to say thank you to our sponsor of today's show, Audible. You guys go out and get yourselves a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/huddleup. There's over 180,000 different titles to choose from, whether you're on an iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. You've heard me talk about it before. It's audibletrial.com/huddleup. That lets them know we sent you. And again, this is a service, an app that I use literally every day because I love to read, but I don't always have time to sit down and turn the pages on the books that I want to read. But Audible allows me to get these books under my belt while I'm doing other things. It's one of the beauties of modern technology, podcasts, Audible. So I know you'll love it. If you try it with that 30-day free trial, you get the free book. So go to audibletrial.com/huddleup and help us patronize these sponsors. All right, so one piece of Broncos news we want to get to before we introduce our guest for today's show. The Broncos senior personnel advisor, Tom Heckert, he's been with the team since 2013. He announced on Monday that he's stepping away from football to focus, unfortunately, on his health. Now, the 50-year-old Heckert, basically what we understand is he suffers from some form of a rare blood disorder. It's kind of slowly debilitated him. If you look at some of the pictures of Heckert when he was first hired by the Broncos and compare him to the last team picture, the stock team picture. In fact, if you go to Mile High Huddle Twitter or Broncos on Scout Twitter, you can see the most recent photo the team submitted for Tom Heckert and just see how emaciated he looks, the poor guy. The illness is just slowly eating him away. And when his contract with the Broncos expired here, they just had the mutual parting of the ways. He wanted to focus on his health, Zach. And, this was planned, obviously, in terms of the Gary Kubiak thing. Obviously, the path to the front office, it was kind of fast-tracked for Gary Kubiak, likely as a preemptive move, knowing that Tom Heckert, he was eventually going to have to step away from the team.
First and foremost, let me say that I hope that Heckert's health is okay. I hope he's going to be okay. I extend my best wishes to him and his family. Some things are bigger than football, and this is one of those things. I'm not going to speculate on the illness that he's dealing with, but I can only say that I hope he overcomes it. Absolutely. And I hope he beats it. But with that being said, on the football side, with him out of the picture, it is solely Gary Kubiak's role now in that front office as John Elway's second right-hand man, along with Matt Russell, the personnel director there. So, yep. And I got to say, I think Kubiak in his first year as that senior advisor after that promotion, the Broncos killed this NFL draft. Yep. And Kubiak, as Elway admitted, was a big part of that whole process. So it shouldn't hurt them too much from a day-to-day standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, with Heckert out of the picture. Obviously, they'll look to replace him. They also lost Adam Peters last year, another personnel guy. He went to the Niners. So they're going to have to do some maybe reshuffling in that front office. But I do, first and foremost, want to wish Heckert and his family well. It's awful at what he's dealing with, yep. And I do hope he overcomes it.
Absolutely, and it's something that that I've known about privately for a couple of years. It's not something that just came out of the blue recently. It's something he's been dealing with. So we definitely wish him the best. And how it applies to, basically what we can project moving forward. I mean, Zach hit the nail on the head there. I mean, you look at what the Broncos did in the 2018 draft and also what they did in free agency. had Kubiak's fingerprints all over it on the draft side, looking for guys who had leadership skills, maturity skills, basically their individual character on the same par as their physical gifts and their talent, which is going to make a huge impact. Very well, as we've talked about on the show before, this could be Denver's new core of the team that can carry them forward for the next 10 years or so. And then you look at free agency, Zach, what he did. I mean, obviously, Case Keenum was the crown jewel of 2018 free agency for the Broncos, and who knows this quarterback any better than Gary Kubiak. So you got to believe, too, that played a big role in the Broncos being so aggressive and going out of their way before free agency even opened up to offer Keenum a deal.
Yeah. Kubiak was a big reason why Keenum chose the Broncos and a big reason why the Broncos locked in on Keenum and bypassed Kirk Cousins. So Kubiak is always going to be that feather in John Elway's cap. He's a very trusted advisor as a friend and on a professional level with John Elway and Gary Kubiak. They have a great relationship. So there's going to be no drop off in that sense with Heckert out of the picture. Gary Kubiak has done a bang up job. Say what you want about him as a coach. Say what you want about how he handled the quarterbacks in 2016. The guy has an eye for talent. He knows how to turn over every rock to find it, and it's only going to help the Broncos in that front office role next to John Elway.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we wish him the best. We'll see ultimately how it ends up affecting the Broncos down the road, but if the most recent history is any indication, I think with Gary Kubiak stepping into that role, everything's going to be okay. All right, joining us now is an old friend of mine, a mentor in this business. He currently writes for The Athletic, covering the Kansas City Chiefs. He is the host of the Chief in the North podcast, the land of 10,000 takes. I love that, my brother. He is Seth Keysor. Seth, thanks for joining us, bro. Really been looking forward to talking to you.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's really good to talk to you again. It's been too long. How are things treating you?
Man, we're just itching for actual football to come back here in just a few weeks. So if I could hurry up and get here, that'd be great.
Amen.
But otherwise, loving life.
Good. I'm glad. Oh, and quick thing, just so you know, I actually did partner up with Locked On Chiefs a couple weeks ago, and they absorbed the Chief in the North podcast, so I no longer have that great tagline, the land
really?
of 10,000 takes. Oh, it's the saddest thing to happen to me in years, honestly.
So how did that happen? Just so they absorbed Chief in the North? What does that mean? They took your subscribers, or you're contributing?
I essentially, I'm going to stop doing the Chief in the North. I'm still going to do a final farewell episode, and I'm going to appear with them several times a week instead.
Oh, cool!
Nice. There was a lot of listener overlap there anyway, so right. it's really exciting to partner up with them.
That's great. Those are some good dudes. Good dudes.
They are.
Well,
they are.
You know, we've talked about it, being that we're on the dead time on the NFL calendar. We've kind of decided here on the Huddle Up podcast to do a Know Your Enemy series type deal. And last week we went behind enemy lines with the Oakland Raiders, and one of the storylines that we focused on was the kind of changing of the guard in the AFC West, because Peyton Manning, Alex Smith, these guys are gone. Phillip Rivers remains, and he's kind of the elder statesman in the division. But the Chiefs are one of the teams who seem to be kind of undergoing a little bit of a makeover, and it might not be quite fair to call it a makeover. Maybe it's more of a passing of the torch. But tell us what your reaction was to the trading of Alex Smith, and whether you think Pat Mahomes is ready to really take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and lead the Chiefs into the next era.
For hours on end, so just cut me off whenever. That's obviously the big question for this season. And so when Alex Smith got traded, I was actually recording a podcast with the Locked On Chiefs guys, and we're in the middle of it, and Chris all of a sudden goes, "Holy crap!" And it was a whole thing. We recorded an emergency thing. We had this whole reaction. It was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I knew it was coming, but I wasn't too sure how psyched I was for it until I went back and reviewed Kendall Fuller's film. Then I got really excited for it because he's a very, very talented. Like, his film blew my mind. It was unbelievable. Best corner I've ever reviewed, and that includes Peters. So, I mean, we'll see if I don't think he'll be the playmaker Peters was, but snap by snap, he was better. So we'll see if that carries through, be that as it may. I was excited for that because the Chiefs needed help at corner. Now, at the time, I thought he would be partnering with Peters. So that was unfortunate. So for me, I personally started calling for Patrick Mahomes during the midseason slump the Chiefs suffered last year, which I know might sound crazy from the outside looking in. But when I looked at schematically what teams were doing to the Chiefs and the fact that Alex just didn't have an answer for it, it told me what I needed to know, that the team really had reached its ceiling with Alex, right, and that there are certain things that he just couldn't overcome. And for me, we don't know with Mahomes. I do think based on the limited stuff we've seen that even though it's not going to be perfect because he's a first-year starter, I do think he is going to be quite good his first year. I think he's ready.
One thing, I've always been a big Mahomes guy coming out of the draft. Even when he was sitting on the bench, I thought he had all the upside in the world, all the talent in the world. And even though he was compared to Paxton Lynch in that sense with physical upside, he really wowed me in that season finale against the Broncos. I'm talking, he really blew me away. A guy has a gun and a half. He was making big boy throws in that game. And I think it really showcased to, beating a top-notch defense that was without a lot of their starting players, but it was still a really good defense in place. What was your reaction to that? Did that really lead you to believe that he was ready to take over for Smith, or to give you more confidence in Mahomes as a starter?
It did give me more confidence in him for a few reasons. One, that obviously was the first week that he would have gotten starter reps. And so it's important to see how he handles certain things. And the Broncos, like you alluded to, some of their starters played half the game, some of them played a quarter of the game. It was just kind of a weird mix and match game. But I kind of liked the fact that Mahomes was playing with virtually all backups because that at least leveled the playing field somewhat from a talent perspective to where it wasn't the Chiefs starters versus the Broncos back. That wouldn't tell us as much. What I really appreciated was seeing how he dealt with certain things. Because even though the Broncos weren't necessarily playing a lot of their best guys for the entire game, and it varied on the drive, of course, they really threw a lot of blitzes at him, including a lot of creative-looking zone blitzes. And I was really happy about that because it gave us an opportunity to see how he handled that. Because zone blitzes are a death knell for young quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So seeing him perform well in that situation, it did make me comfortable. Seeing how he did, obviously, with the comeback drive, seeing how he did the snaps that he did get against the starters, he had to play a ton under pressure. I do quarterback reviews where I kind of chart whatever you want to call it, in-depth snaps, and one of them or in-depth stats. One of them is what I call a flush, which is a play where the quarterback is under pressure before he has time to basically plant his last step in his drop, right? And how someone handles something like that tells you a lot about a quarterback, what he can do under duress. There were 3 times more flushes in that game than literally any other game last year for the Chiefs because the Broncos did such a great job dialing up pressure.
Right.
And so it was great to see how he would handle that. And the fact that he did all right, and it wasn't perfect. He sailed a throw that was a pick. He trusted his arm way too much late in the game in that deep shot to Demetrius Harris that was ill-advised. But it was overall, there were a couple plays where you saw him shift protections and hit the outlet man, seeing that a blitz was coming. Is those little things. And so I guess I would phrase it this way. We already knew before that game that Patrick Mahomes could make plays and throws that other quarterbacks could not. We needed to see him make the plays that other quarterbacks do make. And we saw enough of that to make me pretty comfortable moving forward.
I tell you what, when he came back in after, had the game on ice, and then I think it was Bray came in, Broncos come back, they tie the game. So they send him back in, and the poise he showed on that final drive was just something else. Getting sacked on the first snap, losing 13 yards or whatever it was, and then coming back. But he's a very exciting young quarterback. I can see why Chiefs fans especially could be excited. Now, with Andy Reid, this is a guy I'm kind of curious about. I've always kind of been a fan of Andy Reid throughout his tenure in the NFL. He's sustained success in Kansas City, but you talked about it with Alex Smith a little bit, not getting over the hump. The same can be said for Andy Reid. How much, in that sense, goodwill does Reid have left in KC, and what's your outlook on him in particular for 2018?
It depends on what fans you talk to. He obviously hears, regardless of what happens, because Mahomes is his pet project. And Clark Hunt, from what I've heard, has all the respect in the world for Andy Reid. So he's got at least a couple of years of goodwill left in terms of management. With certain fans, there are a lot of Titans, wrongly, in my opinion, if you look at the film, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what are his weak, some narratives about him that are pretty on point with some of his weaknesses, his tendency to become overly conservative with a lead in playoff games, things like that. And what I really like about where Andy Reid is at right now, and we'll see, obviously. I wish he'd have moved on from the defensive coordinator, but what are you going to do? He is loyal to a fault. What I really like is that last year, every year Andy Reid switches up a few things in his offense, right? There's always some new little wrinkle. That's why he's had a good offense for 20 years.
He's an innovator, man.
He is. And last year especially, we saw him roll out this borderline college offense that teams were copying by weeks 3, 4, and 5. And it was a cool thing to watch, to see him kind of on the cutting edge of this, like, borderline air raid stuff that, you wouldn't think you'd see from an old school kind of conservative coach. And so that, to me, and then like against you guys in week 17, I actually went back and charted how many snaps were essentially what you'd call a spread offense or almost air raid look with like 4 or 5 receivers, majority of them. And there are a lot of people now that they brought in this year with the addition of Watkins, the fact that every running back, they brought in like 15 of them, are receiving backs. There's a lot of conversations that we might see Reid take that to another level. And you know what? I'm here for that. I'll watch that. Win or lose, that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that just finds new ways each and every year to introduce new wrinkles into the offensive canon of the NFL. And one of my favorite gifs of all time is that gif of him entering the Chiefs locker room. And, someone did the deal with the wall and then turned him into the Kool-Aid guy or whatever. But that's one of the all-time, love him or hate him, that's just one of the all-time great gifs, in the sports arena. But, one thing that the Broncos and Chiefs had in common, and you touched on this a little bit, earlier in our conversation, but this offseason was they both traded away a Pro Bowl cornerback to the LA Rams. Now, in this case, it was for the Chiefs, a guy with 19 interceptions over the last 3 years. What was it that precipitated the break with Marcus Peters in that trade? And you touched on it a little bit, but talk about what the Chiefs are going to do to account for his loss in the secondary.
There's a lot of people with a lot of opinions about Peters. I've been doing this just long enough to know a few people here and there, people that I trust. And, you never know because, sometimes people who are involved in team stuff have to say a certain thing, right? They got to sport the company line. My understanding is that Peters had a couple of incidents with coaches, not like a physical fight or anything crazy. There's a whole group of people that are looking to demonize the guy. And my understanding is it had just reached a point with the coaches tenable anymore. They Reid, from my understanding, personally likes Marcus Peters. But there were just one too many kind of moments over the course of years where they just said, we've reached a point to where we can't have this guy anymore, and the juice is worth the squeeze at this point. Now, I'm not saying I agree with the decision because, like you said, 19 pick is, besides a touchdown, the most valuable play in football. But Andy Reid doesn't ever do that, right? I mean, he never ships guys out. If you look back at his coaching career over 20 years, you got Terrell Owens, and that's it.
Right.
And so the fact that he was willing to sign off on that, and realistically, everyone knows that Andy Reid signs off on stuff in Kansas City. That makes me feel more comfortable with it.
It reminds me a lot of what the Broncos did with Aqib Talib. I mean, as good as the talent that he was on the field, what he brought to the teams in terms of headache and baggage just was not worth keeping him around. When you have Marcus Peters throwing penalty flags into the stands, it's not a good look for the team. Do you think, in your opinion, Seth, that's going to affect the defense as a whole, or is Kendall Fuller going to be that massive upgrade that they needed in that secondary?
I think that it's almost impossible to replace the type of player that Peters is. His hand, never seen anything like it. And he's really, and it kind of overshadows, he's a very good cover corner at this point in his. Here's what I'll say. If the Chiefs get the version of Kendall Fuller that and charted wins and losses and stuff, they are not going to take a significant step backward on a snap-by-snap basis. It'll just be different because Fuller's a different type of player. He did demonstrate ball skills, but he's not a freak like Peters is, peeling off his own guy and making a pick on someone completely different because that's what Peters could do. However, I do think, and I've told people this, and I've had people really come after me for it, I do think as a pure cover corner, Kendall Fuller was superior last year by a fair amount. He was. I mean this when I say this. I've been charting Chiefs corners for a while, and I also chart other teams' corners, to just try to have a good idea. Kendall Fuller's tape was the best I've ever watched. And now that doesn't mean, those things aren't necessarily predictive, right? I mean, guys have up and down years. Maybe he peaked last year, but he was exceptional. And so I do think overall the defense hopefully can kind of go through that transition with him and not have a huge downgrade at Marcus Peters, which would be great because around the rest of the defense, I think they've done a good job addressing what was a very, very talent-poor situation last year.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it affects things in the wash, and especially from an attitude perspective. I'm curious to see how that trickles down to the defense as a whole. One thing that we like to do here, Seth, is obviously each week we have the Mile High mailbag because Zach and I fancy ourselves kind of Broncos priests. We offer the absolution and answers to our listeners' burning Broncos questions.
Absolutely.
And in today's case, of course, Chiefs are included. Now, a couple of questions here. We got a few, but I'm going to pick two, and one of them for you, Seth, here is from Mile High Maniac on Twitter, and the question is, how does Seth feel about KC's talent at the skill positions? Obviously, some new blood got flooded in there with free agency and whatnot, so your answer for Mile High Maniac.
I'm going to assume, skill positions usually is indicative of an offensive side of the ball.
Yes, sir.
I feel about that as I've ever. They had a very good offense last year, obviously. Tyreek Hill took another step forward, which was important, and developed into a legitimate, he's still, I wouldn't call him quite a complete receiver yet because they send him deep so often, and why wouldn't you? I had a good talk with, I think it was Matt Waldman about this. It's almost impossible not to send Tyreek Hill deep all the time because he's so much better at it than everyone else. It doesn't make sense to do anything else. And so in that sense, his role in the offense becomes limited, but he did improve his route running last year significantly over his first year. And he's constantly quoted as saying, that's what I got to get better at. That's what I got to get better at. And if he continues to refine that, there's like no ceiling on him. He's a freak athletically. I've never seen anything like him. He gets college separation. It's scary. Obviously, I'm happy with Travis Kelce. He is, depending on whether you're talking to Patriots fans or not, he's the best tight end in the NFL. There might be some people that argue still. He's a great player, and he's the guy that the offense has traditionally been formed around. And I think that'll probably continue mostly because he's that unique a weapon and a talent. I really like Chris Conley coming back from injury as like a third or fourth option. He's solid, and that's all you can ask for there. And Watkins is kind of the wild card because his tape, if you review it last year with the Rams, was fantastic.
Yeah.
But the numbers weren't there. And so it's really interesting. Apparently him and Mahomes have bonded very quickly, but I can very honestly say, and this is the time of year, right? Everyone's optimistic. Everyone's freaking out. Who knows, right? The Chiefs could lose 10 games this year. That would surprise me a little, but these things happen.
Yeah.
But the skill positions on the Chiefs is the best that I've seen in my time as a fan, as far as skill positions go.
So what do you see as the biggest weaknesses on the offense? What's the one glaring area on that roster that, as a fan and as a person who covers the team, that kind of scares you going into the season?
On the offense, and I mean this very sincerely, the only potential thing that could sink this into being a mediocre offense would be if Patrick Mahomes isn't what we're hoping. Because basically the entire offense from last year is back, including Spencer Ware, a very unheralded but very important player the year before. Back, the entire offensive line has returned. Zach Fulton was a backup. People talk about that as a loss. He was a backup.
Yeah.
The entire offensive line is back. All the skill position players are back, except for Albert Wilson, who was the third or fourth receiver at best. He only got pushed in that role because Chris Conley got injured. And then they added Sammy Watkins. So the offense, it was, if you look at, say, like Football Outsiders, DVOA or something like that, it was a top 5 offense. And they're returning all the pieces and adding a potentially really exciting one. And you guys know what a big deal continuity is in scheme and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing that scares me is we just never know with a second-year guy. All signs point to positive with Mahomes. But, and you guys have experienced this too, where everything looked great. And look, I'm a Chiefs fan. I am waiting for the quarterback rug to get pulled out from underneath me.
Waiting for that shoe to drop.
I am. Yeah. We have never had, and Alex Smith is the best quarterback we've had since Trent Green, and I would say maybe he was better than Green, at least individually. Mm-hmm. And so, and hey, nothing against Alex. Alex is a solid quarterback. He's a decent quarterback. But we're not used to having like this idea of some elite guy. So, but that's the big thing in my opinion. If Mahomes is 70 or 80% of what we're hoping he is, the offense should be very, very, very good. If he's what we hope he is, the offense could be stupid good. It really could. Now, the defense, I don't want to talk about that.
Well, that leads me to the next question here. In fact, you might be interested in this, Seth. I don't know exactly what your thoughts are on Pro Football Focus and the way they grade and some of their metrics and stuff. Yeah. But this past week, toward the end of the week, I did a little study trying to figure out which team in the AFC West has the best edge rushing duo heading into 2018. And one of the most, I think, objective and fair ways to measure was what I did was I looked at each duo. Now, obviously, with the Broncos, that's Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, and ostensibly for the Chiefs, that was Justin Houston and Dee Ford. And what I did with all of them, though, was took their pass rush productivity grade, which measures not just how effective someone was in sacks, but for our listeners who don't know, measures basically just how effective they were in creating pressure with all of the opportunities combined. And I basically added them up and averaged them out for each duo. And based on that, with Von Miller having a 14.5 PRP and Bradley Chubb having an 11.6, albeit in college, they emerged slightly ahead in terms of average over what the guys in LA have in Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. Mm-hmm. At the very bottom of that combined PRP were Justin Houston and Dee Ford. The study in and of itself, I tried to be honestly as objective about it as possible, and I allow the fact that, of course, you can't necessarily project with perfection a college player projecting into the NFL like you do, like I did with Bradley Chubb. And so at the end, I basically made the allowance that until someone knocks him off the pedestal, Bosa and Ingram are the top duo in the AFC West. But what are your thoughts about the pass rush the Chiefs have and just overall where they fit in on that, ranking the rungs in the AFC West?
So it's an interesting thing with the Chiefs when you look at their pass rusher, and by interesting, I mean depressing at times. Their second best pass rusher isn't an Jones. And he obviously wouldn't be included in some of that stuff. And his pass rush productivity is going to be a little different because he was on the interior at times. Assignments vary, that kind of stuff. Although they did start lining him up on the edge last year, and that was kind of fun to watch. He's a really interesting player. I actually reviewed his and Houston's film really recently for Athletic. And what I found watching them, and it's just such a tragic thing, Houston and Jones were individually quite good last year. The rest of the front seven was a complete disaster. Just awful. And I think, people talk about, Houston's sack numbers are down. I don't know if Denver fans are upset about Von Miller because I think he had 9.5 or 10 sacks last year, something like that.
10.5, barely double digits.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's interesting to me. You get a chance to see how people view the game. Because Justin Houston had 9.5, something like that. And so people say, oh man, he was terrible. He wasn't doing anything. But what I wrote about actually today is the idea that you can't only have one good pass rusher, and you can't even only have two good pass rushers if everyone else is a net negative. You can't have two good pass rushers and then a bunch of terrible ones. And that's what the Chiefs ended up with last year. It was funny when Dee Ford went down to injury, and Dee Ford is not particularly special in my opinion. He's an okay pass rusher who is a screaming liability against the run. Even losing that third okay guy, you saw the toll it took on their pass rush. And so the Chiefs, in my opinion, the biggest question mark this season, Houston's role last season, and I wrote about this when I wrote his film review, was an incredibly passive one. And I actually talked to one of the fellas at Pro Football in terms of his pass rush productivity stat, because Houston had a lot of snaps, a very fair number. He started out appearing that he was going to rush, and then he would drop into throwing lanes or play some form of contain. And I asked him, I said, how do you guys chart that as a rush? Do you chart that? Because it's not coverage. necessarily. Right. And so that created a weird gray area for them too. And I know that messed with his pass rush productivity stat, and it messed with his win-loss percentage, which is something that I chart. And he just played. I in the games that I reviewed, on 30%, actually a little over, it's like 32% of the pass rushing snaps, Justin Houston had a non-rushing role. And that'll make you crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll make you crazy watching it over and over again. And then additionally, the Chiefs secondary was so bad last year outside of Marcus Peters that even if he, notched a win, if the ball is out in under 2 seconds or even under 2.5 seconds, pressure is largely irrelevant.
Yeah, totally.
And so the pass rush is going to be a really big deal. Jones can really play. I love watching him play. He actually improved a lot. No one noticed because the defense fell apart around him. Houston can really play. They need a couple guys to step up and at least be decent pass rushers. Not even good, right? Just not like a negative. Like Alan Bailey last year would just get killed by one guy.
Yeah.
I'm reviewing his film right now. It's tough to watch.
Kind of a non sequitur, but he's looking like he's going to announce his retirement pretty soon. Give us your farewell message to Tamba Hali.
Oh, man. Tamba Hali is one of the most fun Chiefs that I've ever watched just because he was never a great athlete, but he just terrorized quarterbacks. I'm assuming you guys probably have feelings about him. He did it, and he did it just with hand fighting and effort. Yeah. And it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch.
He's a technician.
Yeah, in his prime, he was a phenomenal player. I mean, not the most athletically gifted, but just a unrelenting beast.
Yeah, he won on talent.
Yep. And what was interesting to me was as I went back, I was reviewing some of his stuff a while ago, just kind of for fun, because I have problems, and that's what I do for fun.
Sick maniac.
I noticed. Yeah, we share the same sickness.
Indeed.
It was always in really clutch moments he often came through. And those are fun guys to watch, those guys who step up. It's always interesting to see your football heroes go away, and it's inevitable. And so there's an entire era of Chiefs football that's ended at this point. I mean, they still got Dustin Colquitt. We still got the punter. But, Derek Johnson is gone after 13 years. Tamba is gone. Jamal Charles went to Denver where they refused to give him the ball, which I wanted to ask you guys about that. Was he not healthy?
He was. They just didn't play him.
He was healthy. They just they didn't want to pay him some of his contract escalators late in the season when they knew, if it was a season in which the Broncos had even a modicum of postseason hope, I think you would have seen him get played by the staff, irregardless of whatever financial incentives were in his contract. But when things went off the rails, they're like, let's not pay this guy any more than we absolutely have to.
That's so unfortunate because what I saw in limited action, even though he had a fumble against the Chiefs, he wasn't quite what he was, but he still looked like he had something.
He did,
and
he had some wiggle left.
That's so unfortunate, but that's what happens with your Halis and your Derek Johnsons. I mean, all things come to an end in football. It's the whole cocktails line. Everything ends badly, or it wouldn't end.
That's right. Well, hey, man, one more question for you, and then we'll cut you loose. It's something I'm always curious about, especially within the realm of, the AFC West and the rivalries. The Broncos have obviously made a lot of personnel changes this year, and most notably the acquisition of quarterback Case Keenum. What is your perception? What is the overall perception, even in Chiefs Kingdom, of the 2018 Denver Broncos?
You guys aren't going to like me anymore. Well, no, here's the long and short of it. You know how fans are. They love to talk smack, and I participate in that all too often. I love to post it has been 1,100 whatever days, since, I did that to a Chargers fan the other day. He got really mad because it's been been 5 years. And, so here's the deal. The Broncos obviously took a step back last year. And I think losing Wade Phillips, that's tough. That's as big a loss as you're going to get. Even bigger than most personnel losses would be because he's such a gifted defensive coordinator.
Yep.
And I think you saw that a bit on the defense last year. Now, again, there's so much talent there. And so I have a hard time betting against any team that still sports the kind of talent the Broncos have on defense. Von Miller, he's just an exceptional player. I think Harris Jr. was clearly the superior between him and Talib, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Agreed.
Although Talib, just as a quick side note, was the only corner I saw give Tyreek Hill trouble last year, which is weird because he's not a burner.
Right.
But he gave Hill a lot more trouble than Harris did for some reason.
That is interesting because just a quick aside, real quick, in the 2014 divisional round when the Broncos lost at home to the Colts, and that was Jack Del Rio's last season as the DC that preceded Wade Phillips coming over. But Del Rio chose to line up Aqib Talib on T.Y. Hilton, and it was just a freaking murder show. The Broncos got torched left and right. So it is interesting to hear you say that he held up well against a speedster like Tyreek Hill that's got that wiggle and that quickness.
Yeah, and maybe it was usage. I don't know what it was, but he did real well. The overall perception, I honestly, I don't pay much attention to the overall perception because, and I mean this with all due respect to the fans that are listening to this podcast, overall perceptions in football are quite often wrong. They just are. And so here's what I would say with regards to the Broncos. I think they've got a lot of talent on defense. I thought Chubb was a fantastic pick. I think he's going to be a stud. I really do. I really liked I can't remember him right now, the receiver you guys got. Sutton. Yes, thank you. I think he's going to help a lot. I think Denver has some stuff in place. My big thing is twofold. I just am not sure what they're going to get out of that offensive line. And Case Keenum, I like Case Keenum. He is definitely an upgrade. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, a marked upgrade. He's got significantly better pocket presence, spins a better ball than the guys you guys had last year. Paxton Lynch, I don't know what stopped him, but he never looked any better at quarterback, and he arguably looked worse as time went on.
Oh, yeah.
And so Keenum, I think he's a better quarterback by quite a landslide, but I will say that I can't quite put him in that pantheon of necessarily good quarterbacks just because about 4 or 5 times a game, it seems like he's shutting his eyes and just throwing it.
Yeah. And
it's fun to watch. You know what I mean?
It's got like that gunslinger mentality where it's like, oh, to hell with it. Bam.
Yeah. It's like, and so if Denver can coach that, like, hey, just take a sack every now and then, dude, it'll be okay. Now, to be fair, if you're going to shut your eyes and throw it at someone, Demaryius Thomas is a good place to start because he can make those types of catches. I think unless Chubb, I think he'll be really good out of the gate, but unless he's a major stud, is Wolf healthy, normal, everything's good?
For now.
Yeah, he had a procedure on his neck. He's supposed to be back to 100%.
Yeah, I think a lot is going to rise and fall on Wolf's health because he is such a good player. But, man, he's just so dinged up. And so I would say right now, I think the Broncos it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. I would put them as a potential wild card team, but I'm not sure I see a big push in their future as far as taking the division quite at this point. I think they're a year.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, truth is the best. We appreciate you, my brother, joining the show. You guys, it's always in your best interest to know what the enemy's up to. You want to go behind enemy lines. You want to know your enemy. Follow Seth Keysor on Twitter at RealMNChiefsFan. Seth, thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man. It was really good talking to you.
Thanks, Seth.
Well, that's going to do it for today. We are officially 1 week closer to Broncos training camp, you guys. You can find my partner, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter at Kelberman247, myself at Chad and Jensen. As always, best way to get a direct response from us, hit us up on the MHH Insiders Premium Message Board. But at the same time, we're always going to try to engage with you on Twitter. So as often as we can, don't be shy about hitting us up there. Big thanks again to Seth Keysor. Follow him on Twitter at RealMNChiefsFan. And make sure you're subscribing, y'all. For Zack Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll talk to you soon.
Mile High Huddle.